European and U.S. sanctions against Russia did not stop the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but weakened the Russian economy. The sanctions had significantly devalued the ruble, but Russia's countermeasures, including requiring ruble payments for Russian gas and pegging the ruble to gold, have stabilized the ruble's value. This caused some Chinese to gloat and make claims about the pending order of Chinese renminbi settlement. Is Beijing in a position to apply the same countermeasures in the event of sanctions against China over Taiwan? Hi everyone, I'm Lei. Welcome to my show. Welcome to Lei's Real Talk. After Russia invaded Ukraine, the ruble was down 40%. It was at 139 rubles to a dollar on March 7th. But the Russian currency has staged a dramatic recovery after Russia pegged the ruble to gold and demanded unfriendly countries pay for Russian natural gas in rubles instead of euros or dollars. This has brought the exchange rate right back where it was at the time of the invasion. It's now 82 rubles to a dollar. The Chinese have been watching this unfold. Some have called for the Chinese government to deploy the same tactic and demand a renminbi settlement in the event of deteriorating international relations. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said at a House hearing on the 6th that the Treasury Department is prepared to impose similar sanctions on Beijing if China uses force against Taiwan. She said the community should not doubt our ability and determination to do so. The question is whether Beijing has the ability and strength to counterattack. Can Beijing use the methods used by Russia, as some Chinese claim? Let's look at some comparisons between Russia and China. European countries are heavily dependent on Russia's cheap natural gas and oil. In recent years, their push of a green policy has made them more dependent on Russian imports. Putin's demand that his opponents pay in rubles for Russian gas is difficult for some European countries to refuse. By pegging the ruble to gold and demanding gas payment in rubles, Russia is indirectly pegging gas to gold. Ronan Manley, a Singapore-based precious metals analyst, had this to say: "Any move by Russia to accept direct gold for oil payments will cause more international gold to flow into Russian reserves, which would also strengthen the balance sheet of the Bank of Russia and in turn strengthen the ruble." Russia is the world's largest natural gas exporter and third largest oil exporter. China, however, does not have a lethal commodity that can bring the world to its knees, except maybe its rare earths. Rare earths is a group of 17 chemically similar elements, abundant in nature, but difficult and dirty to extract. They're essential in the production of microchips, electronics, automobiles, and other high-tech devices. Between 2005 and 2010, almost all the rare earths were sourced and produced in China. The United States, Myanmar, Australia, Thailand, and India have entered the field in recent years. In 2021, China's total volume of exports have increased, but its share in the global market was reduced to 60%. The most important instrument of sanctions is trade. In 2020, China's exports accounted for 19% of GDP and imports for 16%, with a total of 35%. So, 1/3 of China's economy depends on trade with foreign countries. Russia's export is 26% of GDP and import is 21%. The total is 47%. That means almost half of the Russian economy depends on foreign trade. Although China is less dependent on foreign trade than Russia, the makeup of their imports and exports makes a big difference. Russia's top exports are crude oil, refined oil products such as petrol, diesel, and gas, fertilizers, grains, and metals. And its top imports are machinery and equipment, vehicles, chemical products, and consumer goods. China exports broadcasting equipment, computers, electrical equipment and machinery, furniture, plastics, and cell phones, and imports crude oil, semiconductors, iron ore, soybeans, and automobiles. Russia mainly exports raw materials and energy, and imports finished industrial products. China is the opposite. It primarily imports energy and natural resources and exports finished industrial products. When sanctions are imposed on both Russia and China, the impact on employment in Russia will be relatively small, and the sanctions may even stimulate the growth of Russia's manufacturing capability. However, when international sanctions stop China's energy and raw material imports, its industrial production will be disrupted, resulting in production shutdowns and layoffs. China will then lose its status of being the world's factory. The dependence on Western technology is another factor. Although not as developed as China is in electronics and communication technology, Russia doesn't rely on Western technology to support its economy. However, China is different. China doesn't own some cutting-edge technologies and often play the role of an assembly plant. China's industrial capability will lose its advantage without the imported, plagiarized, or even stolen technical know-how from the United States, Europe, Japan, and other countries. The sanctions on semiconductors and the resulting impact on business of Huawei is one good example. Will Beijing have the guts to ask the world to pay for its products in renminbi? I don't think so, because China's products and production capacity are not irreplaceable. Multinational companies can move manufacturing to other countries like Vietnam and Indonesia, or even entirely relocate their supply chains away from China. This is already happening amid the current geopolitical tensions and the unsustainable zero-COVID lockdowns. Can the Chinese Communist Party, like Putin, peg its currency to gold and return to the gold standard? Let's look at who produces and holds the gold in the world. The top 5 gold-producing countries in the world, according to data for 2020 to 2021, are China, Australia, Russia, the United States, and Canada. Russia, Australia, and China produce gold at full capacity, around 300 to 400 tons per year. Since 2014, Russia has been stockpiling gold in large quantities. In terms of total gold reserves, the United States is the leader with 8,200 tons of gold, far ahead of Germany in second place with 3,370 tons. Italy and France have about 2,450 tons, ranking third and fourth. Russia ranks number 5 with 2,200 tons. China ranks number 6 with 1,920 tons. With its relatively large gold reserves and strong gold production capacity, as well as its abundance of natural resources, Russia made a bold move by pegging the ruble to gold. But Beijing can't do so. The regime has indiscriminately printed between 250 to 300 trillion renminbi. If the CCP were to open up the exchange of renminbi for gold, at the current exchange rate of 6.36 US dollar to the renminbi, 250 trillion renminbi is 39 trillion US dollars. Based on the current gold market price of 46.5 million US dollars per ton of gold, the CCP would need roughly 840,000 tons of gold to meet the exchange requirement. But its gold reserve is a mere 1,900 tons. That's not even 0.5%, and it doesn't have the vast natural resources that Russia has as tradable commodities to back up. China was once a country rich in resources. Under the CCP's rule, bad economic policies, pollution, and wastefulness have impoverished the land. The so-called economic miracle in China during the past decades was purely the result of the hardworking Chinese people, Western technology, and foreign investment. If we remove Western technology and foreign investment, the CCP's biggest asset is the hardworking Chinese people, which is also dwindling fast due to the CCP's bad population policy. I made a couple of videos on that lately. But the communist regime has never considered the well-being of the Chinese people. It only cares about its power. That's why I think it is doomed to fail. Here's the video on the Chinese population crisis and the video on China's foreign debt. Thank you for watching. That's all for today. See you next time.